It is Locked On Jazz for the 9th of March. The Jazz played a really good team in Dallas. They exposed some weaknesses. We'll dig into what that means and what the Jazz can or cannot do about that. Plus, we'll look at a stretch of games coming up here the Jazz simply can't blink. And what do the playoff odds say for where we're going to finish? It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen today. We are free and available on all platforms, all of your podcast platforms. Please hit follow, and on YouTube, hit subscribe for free and hit the little bell that notifies you whenever we get going. Special hello this morning to Dallin, Cody, Macy, and Lacey, who are all live with us in the chat on a snowy Wednesday morning. Glad to have you aboard. Glad to be back in this room, as messy as it might be, for the show. I've been on the road for a long time. I kind of knew we weren't getting yesterday's show out. We left the hotel at 6 a.m. So I thought that was going to be probably impossible. The Dallas game, to me, the Jazz, I thought played hard, played fine, got beat by a team that's really good. And Dallas is really, really good. And Luka's amazing. And then they have, they didn't have Brunson that night. Might not have hurt him because, you know, they played a lineup to start that game of Spencer Dinwiddie, who's, 6'5", 6'6", and Reggie Bullock, who I've always loved and thought would be great next to Donovan, who's a defensive-minded wing who can shoot it. Dinwiddie comes in at 6'5", 215. Bullock comes in at 6'6", 205. Finney Smith is 6'7", 280. Dwight Powell was 6'10", 240, and Luka's 6'7", 230. And then they just kind of got bigger, right? Maxi Kleber checks in at 6'10", and Davis Bertans checks in at 6'10". It wasn't particularly good. And then, really impressively, they closed the lineup to end the first half with a lineup of Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Luka Doncic. And why I say impressively, because that lineup has, Bullock much bigger than Donovan guarding much better than Mike guarding Mike. Finney-Smith much bigger than Donovan guarding Donovan. And then Dinwiddie, who's not a great defender because of what's happened to his knees over the years, but he's not bad. And Maxi Kleber, who is a really good defensive player, one of the probably underrated on-ball defenders in the NBA. And Luka, who's a bad defensive player, but he's there. And I think Dallas is just really, really good. They've won now 11 of 13 or 12 of 14. It's not surprising at all. And Luka's on another planet offensively. So I thought they were really, they're really good. They're defending the three really well. They're getting out on people. So they're good. And this is now what happens is at this stage, when you're playing good teams, your weaknesses get exposed. I'm sure if you were looking from a completely Dallas perspective, that there were probably some things we did to them that exposed their weaknesses. I'm not entirely sure what they were, as we were, down a decent amount much of that night. Never led after the first quarter. The game was not particularly close, frankly, when they went on the 12-0 run in the third. That ended it. And that, exposes one of our weaknesses. And then we made a rally back, and there was a little sequence in there where they had some plays that I thought, they were capable of exposing some of our weaknesses. Now, what's important for this conversation is understanding that, I was talking to some people in Dallas, and, no one is perfect. There's no team out there that's perfect. The league has equaled out a bit. And there's just no team that's that great. And so therefore, all of these teams have weaknesses, and all of these teams have issues that are, their Achilles heel at some sense. Frankly, the one team that might not is Phoenix when they're healthy and they're right, but they're not. Chris Paul's thumb is pretty serious. And maybe from everything I've read and understand, far more serious than what we know right now, as in it may not heal coming into the All-Star. And then despite the fact they're winning right now, that's still not the same thing. So, everyone's got their issues, right? Memphis is not complete. The Warriors have got their issues. They're not complete. We're not complete. Dallas has not been very good defensively on the interior since the Kristaps Porzingis trade. So they've got their issues. Denver's thin, right? I mean, everyone's got their issues, and we happen to know ours very, very well, and we're going to dig into them. So here's the first thing that kind of got exposed in that game. And we know this. These are not things, none of this is new. We've known this all year. And that is that if Rudy Gobert is the first player in NBA history to average 15 points and shoot 70%. And the weakness that Rudy has is that he cannot create his own shot. And so they decided that Rudy was not getting the ball. It was not your old Rick Carlisle Dallas Mavericks. And so Rudy gets 5 shots off. And, New Orleans decided the same thing on Rudy, and Rudy got 4 shots off. And the Lakers decided the same thing against Rudy, and Rudy got 3 shots off. And we lose all of those games. There's a minor correlation between Rudy's shot attempts and whether we win or lose. It's not as good as you think it would be. I mean, when Rudy gets 10 shots off in a game, we win generally. That's happened 17 times this year. We've lost 5. We're 12-5 if Rudy gets 10 shots. But that's not a number that we can honestly, you can't look at the coaching staff and the players, I think, and say, Rudy's got to get 10 shots off. And if you look at most of those teams, most of them are below 500, except for the Warriors. He's the 2 teams he's lost to. And the teams we've lost to doing that, the 5 losses are Memphis and 2 to the Warriors. Interestingly enough, by the way, if Rudy takes between 6 and 7 shots, we actually, that's kind of like the sweet spot there where Rudy takes, this is why it's kind of a minor correlation. I obviously looked at this. In 12 games this year, Rudy's taking either 6 or 7 shots. We're 11-1. When Rudy takes 5 or fewer shots, which has happened now this year, I think 11 times this year, we are 5-6. Okay. So that's not great. But the problem is that's not a number that I think we determine. I think the opponent determines that number. And also how many free throws he gets out of it. For shot attempts, kind of a funky number for him. But it's clear. And the teams that are limiting him: Miami, Boston, Dallas, New Orleans, Minnesota, Washington, New Orleans, Milwaukee, New Orleans, LA. And what's also interesting about that is that a few of those teams are the teams that also allowed him to get 10 or more in previous matchups and realized, we really can't let a guy who shoots 70% from the field go get 10 shots, go 7 of 10, get some free throw lines, and they'll beat us. So the first weakness we have is that when I try to figure out why we're number 1 in the league offensively, and we've done this a lot on this show, it's largely because of Rudy. And not because Rudy is able to put vertical pressure on the rim, but also because of the fact that Rudy is able to get 7 or 8, 9 shots a game, plus some free throws, and score 15 points on 7 shots. And we're so far ahead of the game from an efficiency standpoint that we win. And then when Rudy doesn't get those shots, we have a hard time being as efficient offensively. The real number that I haven't dug up, and I will tonight, is after the game or maybe during the day, it's an 8 o'clock tip, is the idea of what is our efficiency based on how many shots Rudy gets. Whether we win or lose might be a little bit irrelevant. It might be more of what is our offensive efficiency. So what are we supposed to do on that? So what in theory should happen is the way you're taking away Rudy is you're bringing a third guy into the pick and roll. We're running the pick and roll at the top, number 1 pick and roll team in the NBA. Donovan's number 1 pick and roll guard. Rudy's rolling. You've got to bring someone in, and we're supposed to be able to hit. This is where length starts to cause us a problem. Our guards are 6'1", and so when they suddenly drive, and now they're 6'7", 6'8", like New Orleans and Dallas all over the place, it's hard for them to get those passes out. So spacing becomes vital. The second thing is we when Rudy's got to roll with the same vigor as ever before and take the 2, either there's 2 guys on the ball or there's 2 guys on Rudy or a guy on Rudy. The only way to stop this is if there's 3 guys involved in the pick and roll. And the number 1 pick and roll combination in the NBA is Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert for a reason. So you have to bring a third guy in. Everyone knows it. That's the only way you handle it. We've got to be able to ping it out of that and then make shots. And this is what's interesting about us. We're not as good a catch and shoot team as we were in the past. Having Bogey back to being Bogey is going to be super helpful in that regard. And then hopefully getting Mike back to being Mike. Because Mike looked really small in both the New Orleans game and the Dallas game driving to the basket with that length trying to make those plays. And so Mike's got to be able to figure out what he's going to do to handle that. He always has an answer because he's been around the league so well. It just takes him sometimes a game or two to figure it out. So that's the first thing on the weaknesses that were exposed is that Rudy cannot determine a shot. So then what's happening is they're putting 2 guys, 3 guys on the pick and roll, and we've got to get back to where that creates offense for us. That probably gets us back to taking, the next number to look at is when Rudy doesn't get his shots. I'm going to guess we're over 50% of our shots as threes, and we've really got to be pinging and moving the ball quickly in those circumstances. So that's number 1. The next 2 are both defensive issues that we'll get into today as well. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai cars, just fabulous lineup of about 4 or 5 SUVs, and then the 2 sedans that have won all the awards. The Elantra is the North American Car of the Year, and the Sonata I was driving earlier this year is just a fabulous car. So if you get a chance, go check those out. The SUV lineup kicks off with the Palisade, finishes with the Kona, with the Tucson and the Santa Fe in the middle. And the Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years and have committed to not charging you more than MSRP, despite the car shortage that's going on. There is a car shortage. Cars are coming in and they're sold when they get to the lot. So let's get you out to Murdoch Hyundai here beforehand, get you a meeting with one of the guys there, set it up, let you look at the cars, what's available, go take your test drive, and then be waiting to have that car coming in and arriving and have its due date. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and Linden. If you're going to stop by, feel free to email me first, and we'll set you up with a meeting so that you can have the full experience. Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends over at Intercap Lending. That's Steve Carter and the great people at Intercap. Intercap just gets loans done. That's what makes it so great, is that when you're dealing with Intercap Lending, is you're dealing with someone who the realtors are going to, people are using, because why? They get deals done. And then we have our own personal loan officer in Steve Carter, who does just amazing work. You can reach Steve at 385-800-8528. Steve's done my own work twice. He's done our COO Locked On work as well. I'll recommend everyone. I was talking to a real estate agent in town who uses another guy at Intercap and says they're amazing. I was like, you don't use Steve Carter? You got to use Steve Carter. I'm like, no, my guy's amazing. So maybe it's just Intercap, but I can attest to Steve Carter being amazing. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. If you call Steve directly at 385-800-8528, make sure you tell him that you're with Locked On Jazz and get our corporate discount. And then also, while you're talking with Locked On, if you're talking with Steve, you can email me first, and I'll just set you guys up with a personalized meeting with Steve Carter and Intercap Lending. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Really do appreciate that. Locked On Now is your daily podcast taking you through all the action of last night. Plus, we've got a Locked On Now on the NFL reaction to the Russell Wilson trade as well at Locked On Now. That's available for you on the podcast feed, Locked On Now. Subscribe to that, or it's at Locked On NBA on YouTube. All right, so the second weakness we ran into was if someone goes 5 out on us and Hassan Whiteside's at center. Now, this was a little new, but it was ugly. So Whiteside checked in to the game at the 6:42 mark of the third quarter the other night, and they had out on the floor. At that point, they had Spencer Dinwiddie, Luka Doncic, Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Maxi Kleber. So now everyone on the floor shoots 35% or better from 3, and they're suddenly able to go 5 out, and Hassan Whiteside has to guard 5 out. Now, Hassan Whiteside's done a lot of great things this year, but mobility is not a skill that he brought to us. And so that lineup has Luka 34% from 3, Finney-Smith now at 39, Dinwiddie at 45 since he's been with Dallas, Bullock's at 36, and Kleber's at 36. Dallas is good, people. Dallas is really, really good. And So now they go to that lineup and they play some pick and roll action on us. And Hassan Whiteside got caught in Never Land in a way that was, frankly disturbing because it just looked so broken. And I don't know the answer to this. This to me, honestly, is one of the more concerning moments that I've seen this season. Everything else we've seen this season, we've kind of known about. They existed. We've had the issue before. We're learning how to adapt to it. We're allowing more threes this year. I have a theory and reason why I'm going to get to in a second. This one jumped out at me a little bit. And the reason it did is because I think this is how people are going to play us in the playoffs when Whiteside comes into the game, and I don't know the answer to this. So if someone has 5 shooters on the floor, the easy answer would be that we go to a small lineup with Rudy Gay or Eric Paschall at center, but that hasn't worked this year. We not only have a hard time defending in that lineup, we have a hard time scoring. But if you go and watch these plays, the first one is a high pick and roll between Luka and Kleba. Kleba clips off Trent Forrest. Luka has the dribble, and he snakes back underneath to the left. Whiteside shadowing him, and Forrest is now caught on Kleba. Now, maybe Forrest has got to fight back and just not allow this switch. But Luka in the middle of the floor, one-on-one on Hassan Whiteside, that's not Hassan Whiteside. Well, I'm not criticizing Hassan Whiteside here. Like, Luka middle of the floor, one-on-one, and anyone's not great. But Whiteside, it's really not great. Like, that's not what Hassan does. Next possession, they come the same thing. This time, Donovan's on Doncic. They spread the floor with their shooters. They actually put one of the guys down in kind of the dunker spot so that they're particularly flat. High pick and roll again. Luka comes off. Donovan gets clipped off by Kleba. Kleba's a 36% three-point shooter, so you can't leave him. And now Doncic is dancing on Whiteside again. Now, if we're playing Denver, they don't, unless Jamal Murray's out, they don't really have the guy that can go dance like that. And maybe this is unique to Dallas, but there's a really high possibility of playing Dallas in the playoffs. The next possession is the same thing. This time it's Maxi Kleba running a pick and roll with Spencer Dinwiddie because Whiteside already got switched and the Jazz got out of it. But now Whiteside's suddenly trying to guard Dinwiddie at 26 feet. This is really a problem. If someone goes 5 out on us when we go to our bench unit and Hassan Whiteside's at center, I don't know what we're supposed to do there. And so I don't have that answer. And that's concerning to me because, again, when we have the other answer is, well, you just go small and you play Eric Paschall or Rudy Gay at center. if there's been a discovery in 72 games of the NBA season or whatever it is of the season, is that doesn't work. When we have played a center that's not Rudy Gobert or Hassan Whiteside, or frankly, Rudy Gobert, Hassan Whiteside, or Doka Azubuike, we not only can't defend, we can't score. The numbers are horrendous. Here's what the numbers are when we do not have a natural center on the floor. Our offense is in the 14th percentile. Our defense is in the 2nd percentile. And we're minus 18 per 100 possessions. So whether it's Rudy Gay or Eric Paschall, and you can say, okay, well, we found out that Rudy Gay with his foot injury and everything else isn't as moving as well. So it's Eric Paschall at center. We've done that very little, 225 possessions. We're minus 24. It actually gets worse. So I don't know what we're doing in that regard. And I don't have that. And to me, that, again, great teams expose your weaknesses. That one jumped out to me like, whoa, they're able to put 35% shooters on the floor. How do we do that? With Jokic, I don't think it'll be quite as much of an issue because Jokic is not as mobile and as Kleba and the guys Dallas had on the floor, so they are not going to as many spots. So I think you can bounce back and get set. And frankly, you're not. If Jokic is popping, he doesn't have the ball in his hands, which is to your advantage. I mean, somebody else is handling. So this could be unique to Dallas, the team we're most likely to play in the first round. And again, the next one I have for you is probably unique, a little bit unique to Dallas. Not entirely, but a little bit unique to Dallas. It might be the Warriors are going to be able to do the same thing. A few other teams be able to do the same thing as well. The Eric Paschal energy is running on our chat room. I'll touch on that as well as we continue on Locked On Jazz today. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at betonline.net. Football season might be over. Basketball in full swing. College basketball really heating up. So get the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next coach will be fired, where Russell would have been traded. You could have had some fun stuff on that. BetOnline remains the best spot for all sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game begins. Our odds keep sliding at BetOnline. I wonder if they still have. I can't blame them, frankly. But let's check it and see where those are right now. Tonight's game between the Jazz and the Blazers. The Jazz are a heavy favorite tonight. There's some fun college basketball games as well. But tonight we are a heavy favorite, a 17-point favorite for the 8 o'clock national televised game. Doris, I know, is on the call tonight as she is in town. So shout out to Doris and congratulations on her new contract. Great to see ESPN rewarding their talent. Phoenix is plus 450, the favorite. Warriors plus 475, Bucks plus 650, 76ers plus 650, Brooklyn plus 700, Miami plus 975, Boston plus 1,000, and we're down to plus 1,800. So we are sliding in that area. We'll look at some more odds coming up on the show. All right, so the other one was late in the game, and this is not new, and this again might be unique to Luka, but they ran a play late in the fourth quarter in which it's kind of a low pick and roll. Royce O'Neal's defending, and it forces Rudy Gobert to come out on Doncic. So when you're defending Doncic, by the way, you cannot let him have a step back left. Okay? So that's the first thing. You cannot let him have the step back left. So then you've got to cut that off. And so you're really often forcing him to a right-hand dribble into the lane. And the Jazz were doing that pretty well. So Dallas moved their offense to Dwight Powell handing off to Luka. They like to this is the addition they've got by Dinwiddie and Brunson. They have another ball handler who brings it up. Luka will start down, and he always starts in the left corner, and he comes around off a pin down, and the first thing they try to do is run a guard to Luka to get a switch because the best defender is always on Luka. So the first thing they want to do is run a guard switch to try to get somebody else on Luka. In this case, it's Jordan Clarkson, and the Jazz do a nice job of navigating that. Royce goes under, knows the play's coming, doesn't get switched, and so really well prepared by the Jazz on that. So now what you have is at the top of the floor, right on the top of the key, Dwight Powell's handing the ball off to Luka Doncic, and as Dallas is able to do their space with shooters, Bullock is on the right side at 36%, and Finney Smith, who's been shooting 50% since the trade, is on the right side, and Dinwiddie is in the left corner with Clarkson face guarding him. So Doncic comes around the pick, and because the Jazz have begun to try to really stop the mid-range shots so much, Rudy stays up high at the free throw line. Well, this means that Powell just slides right to the basket for an easy dunk. This defense is not good. And Royce is trailing, so that if Rudy doesn't stay high and drops with Powell, Luka's getting all the way to the rim. We used to just drop all the way, old traditional drop defense, all the way in. And I think we're worried about that the best players in the NBA hit mid-range shots. And so we've been playing Rudy higher and higher and higher over the time. In this case, Dwight Powell just gets a dunk out of it. Like the end result of this is Dwight Powell is wide open for a dunk, and Luka will beat that every single time. So The answer is not to bring Rudy up that high, because otherwise they get the play behind, which, is not great. It's a dunk, and we don't want dunks. They run the exact same play the next time, and Rudy drops further. Jordan Clarkson also does a much better job, and he kind of bumps Powell, which is what he's got to do to participate in the play as well. And the Jazz defend this really very well. Bogey slides down. Rudy's dropping. Much, much better defense. So you're dropping Rudy all the way. You're now conceding that mid-range. Royce O'Neal, trailing Doncic, goes right to Powell. The Jazz have defended this super well this time, right? So everyone was involved instead of like the time before. Clarkson's bumped Powell's roll, slowed him down. Royce is now switched off Doncic down low to Powell to help out on that. Rudy has cut off Doncic. Bogey has slid in to cut off Doncic, and they kick to the corner to Finney Smith, and he misses a nicely contested three. But Dwight Powell now is inside Royce O'Neal, whose effort to rebounding was not elite. And Powell gets the rebound and then gets fouled on the way back up. And there's the second weakness, is that the minute we make that switch and Rudy gets pulled out, our rebounding is just not great. And so Royce O'Neal suddenly he really has to do a better job than he did here. He's kind of fending off with Powell, arm guarding each other, and he ends up getting shoved underneath the basket so far that there's actually zero scenario where he was getting a rebound in the position he was in at that point, because he was too far down underneath. But that's the problem, is that once, we defend it perfectly and do everything right and get the miss, but now because we defend it perfectly, Rudy has switched spots, and we're not in as good a rebounding position. So, that's the bummer. The next time down, Doncic comes, same pick and roll, but they run this one as just a straight pick and roll. And this is where we're at our best defensively. No handoff, nothing else. And we switch, and Powell rolls. Gobert drops all the way down to the restricted area. He's jabbing at Luka. This is back to old school Rudy Gobert defense. He's basically guarding both Doncic and Powell at the same time. We force Luka right so that he can't get his step back left off the pick and roll. He's in the lane, and he tries a right-hand push shot, and it wedges up on the rim. That's the perfect defense. On a high pick and roll, that's where we're at our best. And teams, we are just so well scouted. Teams know that, and they just don't let us get to that. So that's the difficult thing. All right. Everyone's talking about Eric Paschall. Here's the deal on Paschall and Rudy Gay. Eric Paschall's not playing because we're trying to see if Rudy Gay can get going. We know exactly who Eric Paschall is. He's shown he can play. He's earned that. He's been terrific. He has great energy and great juice. The Jazz ceiling is higher if Rudy Gay is playing well and is an option for the Jazz in the playoffs. You can, bench Rudy Gay right now. He's done for the year. You have him for 2 more years. He's done for the 3 years. You've just wasted an entire 3-year contract on a guy that's been oft injured, coming off the heel surgery, coming off COVID, coming off an illness. It's really like you've got to let Rudy Gay play 10 or 15 games and see if he can get himself going. If he can't, with 5 games left in the season, you go to Eric Paschall. We know exactly what we're getting. Hopefully he's keeping himself ready, and you roll it out. But there's very little reason why you would do that today. Your best chance is that here we go, that Rudy Gay can get going. And that's the goal. Here are the playoff odds in the first round. Number 1, 99.9 is Phoenix. Memphis is now a 54% chance to be the 2 seed. And interestingly, that is now the most likely scenario of any next seed. The third most likely scenario of a seed is now Denver at 52%. We've slipped from 60% to 49% for the 4 seed. We're 21% to the 5 seed, 18% for the 3rd seed. So basically, equal chance we go 3 to 5. Most likely we go 4, but it's kind of flattened out. And we're at 48%. Dallas is at 47% for the 5 seed. And then Minnesota is 45%. They're the 7th seed through the play-in game. The Clippers are at 31%. They're the 8th seed through the play-in game. And the Pelicans are actually, and so that's the most likely. It's, playing only having to win once instead of twice is really a dramatic advantage in regards to making the playoffs. The Pelicans are at 18% chance to make the playoffs, and the Clippers are at about a 70% chance to make the actual playoffs. Minnesota has to win twice instead of once, or it wins once instead of twice is the same thing. They're at about a 62% chance to make the playoffs overall. And, the Pelicans are at a 19% chance. It's a huge, huge advantage to be 7 or 8 rather than 9 in the playoffs. The Clippers are a 91% chance to be 8th in the play-in, and the Timberwolves are a 70% chance to be in the play-in. We have almost no chance to be in the play-in, so we don't need to worry about that. We're 99.3% chance to be 1 through 6, which gets to the last thing that I had today, which is we just have a bunch of games we can't miss here. So tonight's one of them. We're a 17-point favorite. Really, at Sacramento, we have to win, or at San Antonio, and at Sacramento, home against Sacramento. Then we have a bunch of hard games. Home against Milwaukee, home against Chicago is really good. Home against the Clippers, we probably have to win that. We have a bunch of games against below 500 teams, and we just cannot slip up. Charlotte, to me, is like the biggest game of that road trip. New York, Brooklyn, Boston, Charlotte, Dallas, Clippers. We better beat Charlotte. We come back for Oklahoma City and Portland to close out the year. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 if you count the Knicks, 5, 6, 7, and really an 8th game if you count the Clippers as below 500, against below 500 teams in which we have to perform. Those are the ones to me that the rest of the way are as important as anything else. You just can't. The Clippers are 34 and 33, so they're now not below 500. So we have Portland and San Antonio and Sacramento. Our next 3 is below 500 teams. Then we have the Knicks. Then we have Charlotte, who's slipping. And then we have the closing Thunder and Portland game to close the year. We just can't slip on any of those. That's the key to it. All right, that is Locked on Jazz. Have a good one. We'll talk to you late tonight with Postcast after the game. I'll be back with